What's going on, my good people? Mike Hidalgo here. Thank you for joining me on another FCP Euro DIY. Today we are working on a 2018 Volvo XC90. Today on the XC90, we are going to be covering how to do a transmission service. In front of us, we have one of the kits available on fcpeuro.com, which includes all the fluid, the drain plug, and gaskets needed to do this DIY. It should be a pretty straightforward job. If you've seen the P3 chassis video on our channel, it's going to be the exact same process. Things might look a little bit different under the XC90, which is why we're going to cover it today. We recommend 30,000 miles on average for this transmission, the TG81. However, realistically, 50,000 miles is still a reasonable number to go by. This car has 102,000 miles on it. We have no history of it ever having been done before, which is typically the case on most cars, unfortunately, unless you've owned them from new and you maintain them from the start, which is why our kit typically includes 2 sets of fluid. So we're gonna do a drain and fill, flush it, and then do another drain and final fill and set the level. This amount of fluid should help us get some of the old dirty fluid out of the transmission. In extreme cases, you may want to do another set of 4 liters, or if it's really bad, do another kit which has all 8 liters. But before we get into it though, let's take a look at some of the tools we're going to need for this DIY. All right, for this DIY, we have a long funnel that'll help us get to the top of the transmission. I have a 1/2-inch breaker bar. We have a 3/8 drive torque wrench, a long extension, 3/8 drive ratchet, flathead screwdriver. We have a couple extensions and adapters for the tools we're going to be working with here. That's going to vary depending on what you have at home. As far as sockets, we have a 17 mil hex, a T55, a T40, a T30, and a T25, an electric ratchet for some of the hardware. And then to monitor our temperature, we're using this Autel MaxiCheck 808. You can also use Vita if you have that as well for you Volvo owners at home, or any other scan tool. Just note that some of the ways to get to the menu to see that may be a little bit different than our Autel. Not pictured here, but needed as well, is going to be a catch pan for your transmission fluid. It's helpful to have a pitcher or something that with measurements so you can keep track of how much fluid you're draining from the transmission. We'll show you how we do that as we go on forward. A lot of shop towels and some brake clean for the end for cleanup. Now we know what we're working with. Let's go ahead and get started. First things first, we're going to remove our air box, which is going to allow us to get to the fill plug on top of the transmission. Flathead screwdriver, hose clamp. We're going to remove our electrical connector here for our sensor. Just press on the little tab to release and pull back. This one's probably never been off, so we're just going to give it some encouragement with the flathead. Then we're going to undo this little alligator clip that holds the harness in place. Just going to go in with the flathead to free it up so we can swing this out of the way. We have a couple T25s around the air box to undo. Let's zap those out. All right, with those 6 undone, they're going to be captured to the lid. We're just going to pull it up. This is a great time to check your air filter. Probably not the worst idea to put a new one in here. And to get the bottom half of the air box out, it's just a couple grommets holding it in. We have one here on the top right that goes into this rubber grommet here. We have another one by the electrical radiator fan right here. So we're just going to pull this baby up and be mindful that there may be another wire attached to it or not, like this one was on the lid, but we'll be able to tell as we pull it up. And now we can set this baby to the side and we can see our fill plug down below, that beautiful T55. I'm going to hit it with some brake clean, just clean up any debris that may be around it or could fall into the transmission. Nothing wrong with some cheap insurance. And now we're going to crack that baby open. That's perfect there. We're going to leave it just like that. We broke the seal, which is what we wanted, but we don't need it to be totally exposed if you're worried about things falling in. We're in the shop, so I'm not too worried about it. All right, with the plug out, we're going to head underneath the car, pull off our shield, and then we'll show you how to start draining this transmission. We have 10 T30s under here to remove, so we're going to zap those out first. Then there's 2 clips that are still going to be holding on the shield, which we can remove after with the shield together. To undo these clips, you can just pinch them together. They're like 2 little halves that are split, and I like to keep them with the shield. We have one in the back. Then we'll set this baby to the side. And then we're gonna move over to our plug, which is gonna be right here. So let's do that next. We have our T40, which we're gonna remove first. A little bit of fluid is gonna start coming out with that. And keep in mind, for your sake, I guess, for the video, we are gonna measure all of it coming out just to show you exactly what we're doing over here. Hang on to this plug for now. We're gonna reuse it until the final fill. This is gonna be what I'm gonna be measuring in, but I wanted to see the color of the fluid as it's coming out. It's pretty dark, which is why we're doing it twice. All right, I'm gonna give this all the time it needs to continue draining. Once it stops, then we'll pull the larger plug with the 17mm hex and let the rest of the fluid come out. We're gonna use our 17mm hex to break our second fill plug. This one has, the simplest way to put it is a straw, and that's what sets the level inside of the transmission. So this one has a 17mm hex inner diameter. Make sure that's seated in well. Crack that baby free. Extension on the hex bit will save you from bashing your knuckles underneath the car on the subframe. And then just pull this baby out. We're gonna save this, so do not toss this. The fluid still has some red to it. It doesn't smell bad, but it's definitely not been changed in a long time, or ever for that matter. So good thing we are taking care of that today. We're gonna let this do its thing. We'll come back when it's done draining. We're gonna pour this into our measuring pitcher. We'll show you how much we got out, and then we'll go from there. We're throwing our 17mm hex back in, just snugging it up gently. We're not swapping O-rings or anything yet. And then we're using the old T40 drain plug once more. Same thing, we're just gonna snug it up. We're not gonna torque it or anything like that, and it's a very gentle snug. You don't need to crank it. The O-ring is what's doing the sealing, not the plug itself, so. Good, right. I'm going to very carefully do my best to pour this into my pitcher, and then I'll show you what I have when I'm done making a mess. And we'll show you how much we got out and what the fluid looks like. So we have about 2.5 liters that came out. That's okay, just under 3. We're still gonna fill it with 4. We're not gonna be putting any load through the transmission. We're not gonna be making it put out any torque or anything like that. The 4 is just gonna obviously overfill the trans, but it's gonna allow it to kind of take over the amount of good fluid versus bad fluid in the transmission, so that when we drain it again completely, we're getting as much of the old fluid out as possible. We'll see what the fluid looks like once we do that. If it still looks horrendous, I might run to the warehouse and grab another set of 4 liters and do a third, so that way we have 2 flushes and then 1 final fill and set. But we'll see how that looks when it comes out. Yeah, this is pretty bad. The light really isn't traveling through it. We'll show you a sample of what this looks like new in a minute, or before the end of the video, side by side, but not ideal. Nonetheless, the car still shifted fine, it still drove fine, so if anything, it's only gonna be better for it. Now we're gonna go back up top. Again, both of our plugs are in. We're gonna fill it with 4 liters of fluid. Again, very aware that it's overfilled. We're gonna drain it all out again, and then we'll go from there. We're gonna pour in our 4 liters now. Try not to make a mess. I have a nice, clean, long funnel ready to rock. All right. We're gonna hand thread our fill plug in. All right, that's good enough. And now what I'm gonna do is throw in the top portion of our air box. Instead of having to put the box in and out, we're just gonna put this baby in like so. I'm gonna plug her back in. And if you're extra worried about pulling stuff up, you can just rest the filter kind of underneath it like so, but I'm not too worried about it. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna hop inside the car, we're gonna start it, and we're gonna spend about 1 to 2 seconds in each gear. So we'll do park, reverse, neutral, drive. If we can shift it through the gears, I'm not sure on this, we will. And then we'll go back from drive, neutral, reverse, park. Again, 1 to 2 seconds in each gear, kill it. We'll pull the box out again and the fill plug, and then we'll head underneath and pull the drain plugs once more. Foot on the brake, of course. Lets you go to 3 in sport mode or manual shift mode. That's okay. All right. Again, air box out, fill plug out. Let's head underneath the car. Relax. I know the hood is open. Again, T40 for the little drain plug. Just be mindful as you run the car more and more. There's a chance that this fluid is a lot warmer than it was when you first started. In our case, the car was sitting in the garage overnight, so everything was nice and cool on the first drain. But now that it's going to get up to temperature, slowly getting up to temperature as we turn it on and off, it can get a little bit warmer. So just be careful not to burn yourself. This shouldn't be that hot because we just filled it and ran it for no more than 30 seconds, probably combined, but nonetheless. Just on this little stream, I can tell already that this fluid looks a million times better. We're gonna let this do its thing, then we'll pull out the 17mm hex. Depending on how that fluid looks, we may call it good there or do it again if it's horrible. So we'll check it in a minute. That's down to a drip. Let's pull out the main plug. Let's crack the 17 loose again. All right, that should be enough. All right, we'll let this drain again. Once it comes to a full stop, we'll throw the big 17mm hex in and the little plug again. I'm gonna check the fluid. I think we're gonna go for a third on this one. I'm not really loving how this is looking still. Again, not bad, but not great. So we might do a third flush and then do a second flush and then a third final fill. So let me get this taken care of and I'll see you in a moment. All right, I'm throwing this 17 back in. That's enough to hold whatever's in here. Now I'm gonna pour this into my pitcher. I got a little bit in the glass to sample and see what it looks like and see how much we got out. All right, that is more like it. We got 3.8 liters out, which is fine, which is good. Could have been a little low originally. I mean, there is no light penetrating this. All right, I'm gonna make the call. We're gonna do another fill, flush, and drain. And then, so I'm gonna get another 4 liters on top of what we had on our kit. Again, 102,000 miles, never been done before as far as we know, so not surprising that it still looks horrible. So let me take care of that. I'm not gonna bore you through the same process. It's gonna be the exact same steps. We're gonna plug this up, take the fill plug out, throw 4 liters into it, run it for about 1 to 2 seconds in each gear, turn it off, drain it again, and we'll show you what that looks like when we're done. So we ended up doing a third drain and fill on this transmission. So we went through 12 liters of fluid already versus just the 4 for the fill and drain. So we have the initial drain, which was in the trans already, filled it up with 4 liters, drained it again after running it for a few seconds. And then we proceeded to fill it again and then drain it again. So we went through all 8 liters of our first kit. Then we filled it again, drained it again, so that was now 12 liters of fluid. And so we have 4 more, which are going to be for our final fill. We'll show you what that fluid looks like on the table once we're done filling everything up here. Now it's time to prep our plug for the final time we're going to remove it, if you will. This is going to be the 17mm hex plug. Has a little O-ring seated at the bottom. We're going to replace that. That comes in the kit. We're just going to use our screwdriver from earlier. Get that baby started off. There we go. Now we have our new one that's included in the kit. And then the tiny O-ring is going to be for the new T40 plug that we've been taking in and out for our initial drain. All right. Now we're happy with our new O-ring. We're going to thread this back in for the last time. And we're going to torque this 17mm hex down to 35 Newton meters. Not a whole lot. If you don't have a torque wrench, just snug it up. It's just the O-ring sealing. It's not the actual bolt threaded portion, so you don't need to go crazy. There we go. Not a whole lot. We're going to take our old T40 plug. This is going to be the last time we use it. We're just going to snug this one back in again, because we're going to need to take it out to set our fill level in a little bit. Just a gentle snug so that the O-ring can do its thing. Okay, beautiful. We're gonna move these tools out of the way. We're gonna hop back up top, fill it up for the last time. We'll throw the air box back on. That's all gonna be situated for good. And then we'll hop inside with the Autel. We'll show you how to get it to temp. Pretty straightforward. We'll show you what temp we need it to be at, and then we're gonna come back down and set the level. So let's get the air box and the transmission filled back up. All right, let's do our final pour of 4 liters of this red goodness. Once we get all of these in, we're gonna throw our fill plug back in for the last time. We're gonna snug that baby up. We're gonna secure the air box once more, and that's gonna be finalized as well. And then we're gonna hop inside of the car with our scan tool. We're gonna be using our Autel. And our goal is to get the vehicle's transmission fluid temp up to at least 50 degrees Celsius. To set the fill level, it needs to be between 50 and 60 degrees Celsius. For us, since we're shooting, as soon as I get to 50, I'm gonna hop out, and by the time we get our camera set up underneath the car again, it'll be perfectly in the middle. We'll still be monitoring the fluid temperature, but that's how we're gonna operate here. So you'll see us kind of cut and jump back underneath the car. We're gonna be pulling the T40 plug for the last time, and we're gonna let the fluid escape. It's gonna be a stream, slowing down to a slow drip. Once it becomes a slow drip, we can throw in our new T40, and that's gonna set our level. If you remember the straw that's in that 17 mil hex plug, that is what helps set the level inside of the transmission itself, which is why it has that design. So it's pretty neat, pretty cool, and it should be pretty straightforward. So at least now you know what we're gonna get into in case we start skipping around a little bit. So I'm gonna put in these last 2, and then we'll throw in the plug. And just like you saw us do before, during the drain and fills, we're gonna thread this baby back in. Then we're gonna take our T55 and we're just gonna gently snug up that plug. It doesn't need to be incredibly tight. It's just a fill plug. It's never gonna really leak unless you insanely overfill the transmission or something, and that's not what we're doing today, so we're gonna be fine. So just going in with the long extension, just at the wrist, at the head of the ratchet. We don't need to leverage it and crank it down any further than that. All right, let me grab the bottom of our air box and we'll get that fed in next. As we feed in our box, this little opening right here is gonna key into the little duct on the radiator side of things of our XC90. So it's kind of gonna be a motion of in, engage, and then getting these 2 bits in on the rubber grommets. Make sure you don't trap your plug down there as well. We also have an opening at the bottom here that keys in to the left of the wiring harness that runs along our cooling fan. So if anything's giving you a little bit of trouble, more than likely it's gonna be this guy right here. What I did to help myself was set this down so that the bottom circular portion would kind of line up as best as possible. This ducting coming out of the firewall wasn't happy, but if you reach into the air box and push up on it, that was really the only way I could get that up so I can squeeze this thing kind of in diagonally as it needed to go in. No problem. A little bit annoying, but you will definitely be able to get it. Just take your time with it. Don't break anything. Now the top of our air box can go back in. All right. Let's get these T25 secured. These are just going into plastic, so don't crank these 6 down like crazy, just snug them up. Now let's plug in our air sensor. And we'll latch that alligator clip back in its place. With our air sensor plugged in, don't forget to tighten down your clamp. Okie dokie, we are done under the hood. We're gonna close this up. We're gonna hop inside the car, hook up our Autel. We'll show you how to find the temperature reading on our Autel specifically. Your scan tool may be a little bit different depending on what you're using at home. But then once we get it all set up, we're gonna hop back out the car and we'll get underneath as we approach 50 degrees Celsius for the final fill. All right, we are in the Volvo. The first thing I wanna make very clear is while we do the whole fill set procedure, the car is going to be on the entire time. You have to have it on to set the fill level. So be sure to do that at home. We're gonna turn this baby on. We're gonna hop into the service function of our Autel. Then we are going to look for transmission. Here's trans adaptation, Volvo, automatic selection. Hit OK. It's OK. This is the TG81 all-wheel drive model, so we're going to go with all-wheel drive. If you have front-wheel drive, you can just do front-wheel drive. Everything else is the same. And we're going to go into hot functions. OK. We can do readout of the transmission oil temperature. Right now we are at 24 degrees Celsius. We're only halfway up to where we need to get the car into service position for setting the fill level. If you haven't done so already, don't forget to cycle the car through the gears at least once. Foot on the brake the entire time. We're not trying to put any load through the transmission. 1 to 2 seconds in each gear is going to do the trick. So we're going to let our transmission get up to temp, and then we will hop underneath the car once we're hitting about 50 degrees Celsius, get our camera set up, and then we're going to be pulling the T40 plug again. The goal is to get the fluid to come to a slow drip versus a stream, and then we can throw our plug back in. That's going to set our level, and I want to cover that now because it's going to be a little bit noisy underneath the car. Moving forward, once you're done with that and the car's all back together, depending on your scan tool, you may have an option to carry out a trans adaptation or reset depending on the status of your car. If you had hard or bad shifting, you may really want to consider that. This car was still shifting perfectly fine. We did flush it 4 times, so it might not be the worst idea regardless. This auto has a procedure for that. It's a whole long-winded thing. This one requires the brake pedal to be pressed for the whole time. Let's see what we got here. Starting the routine. The routine takes about 16 minutes to complete, and the brake pedal must be pressed during the whole process. So that's going to be something that we're going to do perhaps after we're done with this video. Again, this is going to be specific to this auto only. It's not going to be helpful if you don't have one at home. But also, this car didn't need it, so we could continue just driving it as it was, and everything's going to be great. So I'm going to let this get to 50. I'll catch you underneath the XC90 in just a little bit once we get to that temp. All right, we're back under the Volvo. We're going to pull our T40 for the last time. When we go back in, it'll be the new one. I'm going to catch some of the fluid to see what it looks like, but we're just going to let it go from a stream to a slow drip, and then we'll throw the new T40 in. Just be careful now. At this point, the fluid is going to be hot, so try not to get it on you. Definitely wear some gloves for this step. Oh, I'm happy to say that the fluid looks much better now. So that's a win. Once it gets to a dribble, we have our new T40 with its new O-ring. That's part of our kit. Torque spec for this little guy is 8 Newton meters. Not a whole lot. You can just use the old calibrated wrist to snug it up as well. Whatever is best for you. All right, that is what we want. Let's get this T40 in. This is our new one. From here, I'm gonna put on the splash shield, the 10 T30s. Then I'm gonna walk you over to the table and show you what our fluid looks like after drain, fill and drain, fill and drain, fill and drain, and fill. So, see you in a minute. All right, we are at the table. Let's look at the semi-delicious looking drinks we have here on the table. They're not drinks. First and foremost, if it's not pretty obvious already, this is our control. This is new Aisin fluid. This is what went into the transmission every single time we did a drain and fill. Here is our 102,000 mile fluid. I don't know if you can pick this up on the camera. We're gonna get you closer to all of these so you can get a better view, but this is just straight up not allowing any light through. This is dark, definitely has never been serviced before. This is what we drained out originally. This is what we got after we put in our first batch of 4 liters and then did another drain. You can still see it's still very dark. Doesn't really have any red color to it. And we did our second fill and drain. So this technically would have been the final fill, but we bought another kit of transmission fluid with another 8 liters, so we went extra. So what came out of the trans originally, what came out after the first 4 liters, what came out after the second set of 4 liters, still super dark, a little bit more of a tint of red to it, but not great. Then we did a third set of 4 liters, and this actually has a little bit of color and is actually letting a little bit of light in, which we'll show you overhead, which is kind of cool. And then this is what we just did now on our final fill set. So a lot more red in this one, actually let some light through. And again, this was just doing this all on the lift. Another thing you could do is A, stay on top of your intervals. B, maybe drive the car a little bit if you want to put some miles and get a little bit of your money out of that fluid while you flush it, and maybe you do it every 100 miles or something like that if it's a higher mileage vehicle and you're trying to save it. Again, this was 102,000 miles with no service history at all. So the fact that we got some red coming out of it now on the final fill, I feel good with that. We will tell Nate to do his service in the next 30,000 miles, which is the recommended interval from Volvo. But with that, my good people, that is going to conclude this DIY for today. Overall, a really straightforward and easy DIY, something I highly recommend you stay on top of and continue to service in the ownership of your spa Volvo or Aisin 8-speed Volvo. Just remember, no matter where you do it, whether you do it on the lift, in the driveway, or on the garage floor, keep the vehicle level at all times and you're going to be good to go. If you like this video or you learned a thing or two, please consider giving it a thumbs up. If you have any questions or comments on what we did today, leave those in the comment section below. And if you like this DIY and you'd like to see more like them, consider subscribing. We make new ones all the time. As always, thank you for watching. Catch you in the next one.